Over the years, TV horror has brought us some truly terrifying characters. Often though, the scariest TV characters are found outside the confines of horror. Prestige dramas, crime capers, and even full-fledged comedies have all seen their share of frightful figures. In some cases, the show's heroes eventually triumph over these nightmarish characters. In others, their reign of terror may never end, or they may even see themselves as the hero of the piece. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with the 10 scariest characters in non-horror TV shows. Number 10. Logan Roy in Succession. In the world of Succession, being uber rich gives you the license to act like an idiot, behave dreadfully, and still live a life of total luxury. The only caveat to that is that you will be living in fear of your overlord and, in some cases, father, Logan Roy. As played by Brian Cox in the role of a lifetime Waystar Royco CEO, Logan Roy is intimidating no matter what he's doing. If he's screaming and hurling abuse, obviously he's scary. If he's delivering instructions in a calm tone, he's still scary because you know what's going to happen if you get something wrong. If he's sat perfectly still, he's still somehow petrifying. This goes double if you're one of his kids, who equally attempt to impress and avoid their father at work and at home. Shiv, Kendall, and Roman, and to a lesser extent slightly older brother Connor, are all dreadful people, but it's not hard to see why. They've been groomed by dad for the family business, and when they disappoint him, does he ever let them know it? Succession suggests every now and then that Logan is on the wane, but then he'll hit you with another scheme, put down, verbal assault. Age is just a number when it comes to Logan Roy being scary. Number 9. Max Bennett in Justified. Timothy Oliphant's Raylan Givens comes across some scary, impactful characters over 6 seasons of Justified, but few can hold a candle to Max Bennett, played with incredible poise and humanity by veteran character actor Margot Martindale. While many of Justified's characters fit into the reasonably light-hearted tone of the show, Max is a far more toned-down proposition. She's a reluctant drug dealer, having taken over the Bennett weed business after the death of her husband. She has an immense aptitude for the game though, not to mention the nerve and steel. When first we see Max, she's silkily convincing an underling to drink what he knows to be poisoned moonshine, having disappointed his boss. Max's words are sweet, but there's an unmistakable undercurrent of menace. Just what would happen were he to refuse? She's the greatest baddie Raylan comes across, a cool, collected counterpart to his hot-headed ways, and she conveys total terror without ever really leaving her seat. Number 8. Chris Finch in The Office. Gervais and Merchant's early noughties masterpiece remains beloved in no small part because it's so incredibly relatable. And office loudmouth and all-round bad egg, Chris Finch is one of the most well-observed pieces of the puzzle. We've all known a Finchy, an inveterate liar and braggart, eager to boast about the smallest thing, from his genius-level IQ to his uncanny throwing ability, and desperate to put anyone else down to bring himself up. Finchy serves the purpose of making David Brent likeable by comparison. Brent is in awe of his travelling salesman pal and absorbs endless abuse right up until the immensely cathartic finale. Chris Finch is the kind of man who makes coming into work that much more a chore. Whether you're the target of his sophomoric insults or just someone in his proximity who has to listen to him blather on, his presence in the office is enough to ruin your day. Most annoyingly, he almost never faces the consequences of his actions. He's back on the road, away to haunt another office in another commuter town. Number 7. Phil LEOTARDO in The Sopranos. Most characters in The Sopranos, from Tony on down, are scary in their own right, but most of them have a lighter side, a spark of humanity. Not so Phil LEOTARDO, the veteran gangster turned New York boss who serves as the Jersey mob's ultimate antagonist in the closing stretch of the series. Played by mafia movie legend Frank Vincent, Phil has a chip on his shoulder the size of the Empire State. He did 20 years in the can for his crew and comes out expecting the world. As a revered OG, he finds his way straight to the top of pragmatic Johnny Sack's New York crew and quickly begins preaching violence to his boss. When Johnny's locked up, Phil finally steps into the hot seat, and from there, no one's safe. Perhaps his most sinister moment comes opposite Vito, Phil's cousin by marriage. When Vito's homosexuality is discovered, Phil takes matters into his own hands, cheerfully icing Tony's employee in a gruesome manner. Phil bears grudges for years and believes himself to be entitled to status off the back of his lengthy prison sentence. He's the greatest threat Tony and the gang ever face, and to that end, his final moments and unusually graphic death could hardly be more earned. Number 6. Malcolm Tucker in the thick of it. Sometimes a horror movie monster is no less than what the protagonists deserve. Westminster's sitcom The Thick of It focuses on the middle tier of Britain's corridors of political power. Its main characters are government lifers, ambitious MPs and their advisors. Unsurprisingly, these are a fundamentally grasping, dishonest bunch, willing to say, do and think anything to stay in or gain the hot seat. Into all this comes a fire-breathing killer in the form of a lanky Scotsman in an off-the-peg suit. Peter Capaldi's Malcolm Tucker was a masterpiece of sitcom characterization from the off, a perfect mixture of performer and writer. Few could sell those lines like Capaldi. It's a cacophony of noise and rage, every third word a swear, florid rants that in lesser hands would sound completely ridiculous. Tucker should be the villain, but he's not. In fact, he's the one sane man in the business, often the only competent person on our screens tasked with whipping these idiots into shape. He's a tradesman, and his tools are sharp, wounding words. Number 5. Simon Adebisi in Oz. Being a HBO drama set in a maximum security prison, it's no surprise Oz is full of scary figures, from predatory white supremacist Vern Schillinger to arch schemer Ryan O'Reilly. To be the most frightening character amongst that lot is going some. Enter Simon Adebisi. Played by the strapping Adewale Akinoye Agbaje, he's immediately a physically imposing individual, but his fear factor goes way beyond that. At the start of the series, he's completely unhinged and proud of it. Incarcerated for life without the possibility of parole, there are really no consequences to him indulging in his every narcotic and sexual desire. Over time, though, he becomes even worse. Upon getting control of his addictions, he realizes that his gang has the numbers to take over the prison and begins to ruthlessly implement his plan with the guards in his pocket. Akinoye Agbaje's spectacularly charismatic, otherworldly performance makes Adebisi feel more than human, and he ascends to a wrathful godlike status within Oz's Emerald City. Once he's taken out of the show, it's never quite the same again. Number 4. Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. The most terrifying individual in Westeros isn't a towering warrior or a vicious sellsword. It's the woman at the top of the pile who pulls the strings and makes the decisions. With a gleefully unsympathetic performance from the great Lena Headey, the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms is the most despicable, loathsome, and downright terrifying character in George R.R. Martin's sprawling universe. She's trouble from the start. By the pilot's end, she's engaged in graphic incest and arranged for a child to be pushed out of a high tower. It only gets worse from there. Cersei coddles her awful son to become a brutal tyrant, spiritually crushes the children of her enemy, and sends good men to their death out of spite. When Cersei is toppled by her younger son's new bride, it seems for a while she'll get her just desserts. Instead, she blows up a church, killing hundreds and finally gaining absolute power in King's Landing, albeit at the cost of her last sliver of humanity. Power is what makes Cersei so chilling, and more to the point, her willingness to use it to truly despicable ends. She's a tragic character in many ways, with unhappiness rife in her backstory, but she lashes out at the world with extreme prejudice. Number 3. Lalo Salamanca in Better Call Saul. While the Breaking Bad prequel unsurprisingly leaned heavily on its parent show, its best moments came from the entirely new creations. As far as antagonists go, Better Call Saul's Lalo Salamanca is one of the finest additions to the Gilligan-verse to date. Played with suave, sinister charm by Tony Dalton, Lalo came into the show with a family name to fear. For the most part, the Salamancas we've seen have been scary in a hot-headed, violent, unpredictable fashion. Lalo was a different cat altogether. Dalton's handsomely mustachioed portrayal was seductive, silver-tongued. While Hector and Tuco Salamanca scowled and bellowed, Lalo smiled and purred, reassuring you that everything was alright before the killing started. In a show piled high with arch schemers, Lalo seemed a cut above the rest. He moved with total and utter self-belief, swanning into Albuquerque and playing the game like a pro, even going toe-to-toe with Gus Fring. Better Call Saul is the sedate character study to Breaking Bad's thriller, but Lalo Salamanca was something altogether different, a figure of total fear, who brought death and destruction wherever he went, and did so with a fetching smile. Number 2. Lois in Malcolm in the Middle. The average sitcom can rarely be said to tap into the primal fear just about all of us experience growing up. Well, Malcolm in the Middle certainly does. The sitcom Mum is hardly a new innovation, but few have done so with the ferocity and relatability of Lois Wilkerson. With a totally invested performance by Jane Kaczmarek, Lois is one of the most imposing figures ever seen in comedy. She, of course, is only trying to do the best for her kids. She's a put-upon mum with a large family and a job she doesn't much care for. She's taking what she's given and trying to build a future. But is she ever scary while doing it? In the Wilkerson household, nothing goes unpunished. Lois is perpetually at the end of her tether, and with, at the show's start, 4 tearaway sons to deal with, that's hardly surprising. She knows the only way to possibly keep them in line is through fear, and she brandishes her rage like a weapon. This classic sitcom takes the trouble to flesh out Lois's own difficult childhood, and she's never portrayed as a villain, just a mother who can't afford to take any nonsense. But her commendable aims as a human don't make her any less frightening. Number 1. Marlo Stanfield in The Wire. David Simon and Ed Byrne's Baltimore masterpiece is filled with outsized characters, loquacious kingpins, colourful gangsters, killers with scores of bodies to their resume. But the show's most terrifying character across all 5 seasons is a young man operating under his real name who barely twitches a muscle. Marlo Stanfield appears in season 3 after we've established that the Barksdale crew has West Baltimore's drug market locked down. That doesn't last long. The younger Stanfield quickly takes over the scene through a combination of smarts and ruthlessness, and by the time we get to season 5, the city is his. Jamie Hector's performance is mesmerizing, with Marlo almost a completely blank slate. It's never clear why he wants to rule the Baltimore drug game so much. The man is simply addicted to the power and willing to do anything he has to in order to maintain it. He's an unassuming figure to look at, but when he rolls up on a block, far larger men run in fear. His lack of obvious depth is indeed the most intriguing thing about him. We know so little about Marlo, where he comes from, what he wants, but we absolutely believe in his ability to seize power and to wield it mercilessly. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.